I was doing some research on the mobile app market the other day, and I came across this projection that said that the global mobile app market, which was valued at $106 billion in 2018, will almost quadruple by 2026 to reach over $407.31 billion. That means that it's probably the perfect time to launch a mobile app startup, right? Well, pump your brakes, because before you hop in feet first, there are definitely some ugly truths that you need to know. Before we discuss these truths, this isn't to turn you off from launching an app. The app market is primed to grow, and it's going to continue giving a ton of opportunity to a ton of entrepreneurs. But it's going to take a lot of commitment, both financially and time-wise. And you should definitely consider these things before you make that commitment. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 ugly truths about launching an app startup. And we're going to get started right now. The first truth is the app market is super saturated, and every conceivable industry already has tens, hundreds, or even thousands of apps already operating in it. Once upon a time, if you wanted to download an app for dating, for instance, you would have options like Tinder, Plenty of Fish, and maybe a couple of others. But if you're looking to launch a dating app today, well shit, good luck, because there's literally a dating app for everything. There's dating apps for general singles, there's a married person dating app, there's one for men with beards and the women who like bearded men. There's even an app for people who love bacon. And it's not just the dating app sector either. Most industries are hugely oversaturated with different apps. There are so many app-only banking options, trading apps, social media apps, fitness apps, diet apps. Like literally any app category that you could possibly think of probably already has numerous options. Traditionally, most entrepreneurs would try to stay out of a saturated market. If there's already 14 Italian restaurants, for instance, in a city of 20,000 people, it's probably not a good idea to launch another one. The market is already too saturated. It's too many of them already, and probably not enough customers to spread around for all of them. That is, unless you have a massive unique selling proposition that they can't duplicate. Like maybe instead of an Italian restaurant, you're gonna launch some type of Italian Caribbean fusion restaurant that's serving jerk chicken ravioli or something. And really, it's the same thing with apps. The way to get around market saturation and stand out in a competitive industry with your app is to have a real unique selling point. There has to be something about your app that people can't find in other apps and that other app startups can't easily duplicate. Take TikTok, for instance. It's not like there weren't already 100 social media apps in the App Store. You have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and so many more. You even have Vine, which had a ton of similarities as TikTok but ended up failing. But there were unique selling points that TikTok had that Vine didn't, like monetization for creators, in-app content creation tools, and longer but still quite short videos. If you're gonna win, you have to be different. And I mean way different. All right, so let's move on. The number 2 truth that's probably gonna demotivate you a little bit until I tell you why it shouldn't is the fact that app development is extremely expensive. And I'm talking like pay off a Dodge Charger expensive or empty your kid's college fund expensive. The more unique it is and the more features that it has, well, the more it's gonna cost. Now don't get me wrong, you're gonna find developers on places like Upwork or Fiverr telling you that they can develop your whole application for $500 or that you can hire them for $8 an hour. And you can hire them. But unfortunately, your app is gonna be trash, I promise you. On the other end, you have software development agencies. And I know quite a bit about these because, well, I own one. And I can promise you that today, you're not gonna find a good app development agency for under probably $65 or $75 per hour. And that can easily go up to a rate of $150 per hour or more. Especially if you're building some type of complex technology that involves AI technology, machine learning, virtual or augmented reality, or any other specialty type of technology. Now, if you're a developer yourself, then this one might not be much of a challenge. Maybe you already have the skills to build out parts of the app, or even the entire thing, and you can avoid these development costs. But if you don't have those skills yet, then you would be at least a year off from building your software, even if you started taking developer courses today and working it like a full-time job. And unfortunately, that's the truth. But there is a bit of a workaround. And I actually wouldn't even call this so much of a workaround. I probably just call it the proper way of launching an app startup. And it's called a minimum viable product, or an MVP. And basically, this is a stripped down version of your application that includes only the most core features. And you piece it together the cheapest way possible, even if that means using existing code or templates, or building it on a no-code platform like Bubble. And even if it's not the prettiest, you get the MVP out there. It might cost you anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000, give or take, depending on how complex those core features are. Then when you start earning revenue, then you use that money to continue developing the app. Or you start generating some traction by getting users, and then you attract an investor who can fund the development with a trusted app agency. And when I say trusted app agency, well, I really mean my agency, ThinkLions. The concept of a minimum viable product can be a bit overwhelming to understand on your first time hearing about it. And for that reason, I launched an ebook called Build Your Fundable App, which will walk you through the step-by-step process of creating a minimum viable mobile app. It also gives a few really great examples from a few major app brands that launched using an MVP and shows exactly how they did it. So if you're launching or even thinking about launching an app startup, you definitely want to read through this book. And the good news is it's free. I'll leave a link down in the description so that you can go and download it today. Okay, let's get back to these ugly truths. The third truth that you need to know before building an app startup is that consumers only use a very small number of apps on average. As smartphone users, we download a bunch of apps, but we actually only use very few of them. Let's look at the statistics. There are somewhere around 6.6 billion people using smartphones around the world, but 65.5% of them download 0 apps each month. They use the ones they have and aren't really browsing the App Store that often. I mean, I haven't actually browsed the Apple App Store since I had my first iPhone, and that was the iPhone 4. Now, I only visit the App Store when there's a specific app that I know that's in there, and I just go and type it into the search bar. But that's kind of besides the point, so let's get back to the stats. The average person has more than 80 apps downloaded to their devices, and you're gonna be fighting for one of those 80 spots on your user smartphone. But unfortunately, that's not the bad part. The bad part is that out of those 80 apps, the average person only uses 30 of them each month. So really you're fighting for 1 out of 30 spots on your user's list of apps that they actually want to use. In other words, you have to focus on increasing engagement, retention, and stickiness. You have to track your users' metrics. You have to understand their behaviors. And then you have to continue making improvements to your apps so that you can increase those metrics. If you want to better understand exactly what metrics you should be tracking, I'll pop a link to a video up here somewhere that breaks down everything you need to know about pirate metrics. Here's another truth about launching an app startup. Monetization is difficult. It's definitely not as easy as launching an app and charging $1.99 in the App Store, or just thinking that you'll run a few ads and actually earn a profit. It probably won't happen. Depending upon what type of app you're building, you might need hundreds or even thousands of users before you can actually monetize. Like if you're building a social media app, for instance. I mean, sure, you can showcase some ads to monetize those few users that you have, but you'll probably only earn a couple of dollars each month from your ads as you're growing your user base into the thousands and tens of thousands. With so many apps on the market, very few paid apps actually get downloaded. And by paid apps, I'm referring to apps that have a price on them in the App Store and you have to pay to download them. Seeing $2.99 or even 99 cents on an app in the App Store immediately turns off 85% of people. So that leaves you a bit limited in monetization strategies. You have in-app purchases where users can buy things within the app, or monthly subscriptions. Those are really the two main options when it comes to monetizing most apps. But it's not just about having a monetization strategy. You actually have to provide enough value that people will adopt your strategy. If you develop the right product market fit and you put the right marketing strategy in place, well, that's definitely a huge part of your success formula. The next ugly truth is that things are about to get really competitive. Remember how I talked about how the market is already super saturated? Well, you really haven't seen anything just yet. In Western countries, we're used to everyone having iPhones and Androids in their hands. We've seen 3G, 4G, and 5G. I mean, I've literally seen 5-year-olds with their own smartphones, and it's honestly quite insane. But in less developed countries around the world, the infrastructure required for smartphones has only recently caught up. And that basically means two things. First, hundreds of millions more customers will enter the market soon, ready to download and use new apps. And second, millions of developers and entrepreneurs that may not have been a threat to you before will now be a direct threat to you as an app creator or app startup founder. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at the statistics. Back in 2016, 65% of Americans owned a smartphone of some type, which was up from 35% in 2011. By 2021, that number reached 85%. But in India, only 23% of the population owned smartphones in 2016. Now in 2022, that's risen to 66%. And by 2026, that number will rise to 81% of the country. That means an additional 15% of India's population will enter the market as potential app consumers and potential app developers. Just to give you an idea, India has a population of around 1.4 billion people. So if you do the math, that's about 210 million people who will adopt smartphones over the next 4 years, and that's in one single country. You'll see this same insane rate of adoption in regions throughout South America and Africa. In sub-Saharan Africa, 495 million people subscribe to mobile services, representing around 46% of the region's population. And by 2025, Africa will have another 120 million new mobile subscribers. What I'm saying is, app creators have a huge opportunity presenting itself as hundreds of millions of new people around the world adopt mobile and smartphone technology. But they will also be facing competition from bright and innovative entrepreneurs around the world who will be entering the market with new technology and a determination to take your users right from under your feet. But again, this isn't to deter or to demotivate you. Ultimately, I want you to win. I want you to launch businesses that succeed. And you can't do that if you're not aware of the risks that you're going up against. These are the truths. These are the facts. If you understand the obstacles that you're likely to face across your journey, then you can plan your route correctly and make detours where necessary. Now, there's only one more thing that you need to launch your app successfully, and that's the right launch strategy. And you can find out how to launch your app startup in 90 days in this video right here. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, take care and keep doing amazing shit.